All right, class. So here we are. We're going to begin learning about the procedures of creating a presentation. So these are the steps that we need to take in order to create very effective and very stunning presentations. So step one is to determine the purpose of the presentation. And this is what we talked about in our last lecture, which was either creating an educational, persuasive, or a narrative type presentation. And the reason you want to do this is because there's certain language that you'll use in the presentation, depending on the type of presentation it is. All right. Because if you're trying to educate someone, there's certain words and phrases that you'll probably use versus if you're trying to persuade someone, you're trying to be more convincing in your approach. And for a narrative presentation, it's going to be like more like a story. All right. So first step is to determine the purpose. Now, step two is who's the target audience. All right. And this may be the first time you heard that term before, but a target audience is the person that's receiving the presentation, who the presentation is for. And, a lot of times it'll probably be for your teacher or for your classmates if you have to present it to them. So yes, or your target audience can be more specific. Maybe you'll have to create a presentation for the people on your soccer team or the people in your band class. A target audience is that specific group of individuals, all right, that you'll have to present to. Now, step three, moving on to step three. Step three is for us to create a storyboard. All right. Now, this is an optional step, but it is beneficial for you to do. Now, if you've written an essay or a report before, you'll know that sometimes you'll have to create a rough draft, or your teachers will require you to submit a rough draft. And that's exactly what the storyboard is. And it's a rough draft of your presentation. So on a sheet of paper or something, you can, draw some boxes and determine, what content you want on these pages, what images you want to use, what stuff you want to talk about. It's just notes. That's all. These are just notes and ideas that you'll jot down. And basically, it's used so that you can organize. It's basically used so that you can organize your content. All right. Because the thing is, what I've noticed a lot of students do is when they create presentations, they copy and paste these huge paragraphs onto their slides. And then when it's time to present it, they want to stand up and just read from the slides. And that's the wrong approach. And to help combat that so that you won't do it, it's a good idea to create the storyboard so that you are familiar with your content and it's organized, how it flows, and you don't have to rely on reading from the board or something like that. Okay. Yeah. All right. So step four, selecting a design. This is where it starts to get a bit fun. All right. I think this is like everyone's favorite step to do. And a lot of times, and I'm sure this is the first step you always started with. It was picking a design for your presentation. All right. So for step four, you want to choose what you want your presentation to look like. All right. And your design should kind of be appropriate or match the purpose of your presentation. So if you're creating a presentation about a beach trip, have your design be like a beachy theme. Or if you're creating a presentation about sports, have a sports theme style presentation. All right. Basically, you just want whatever theme you use, you want it to either be simple or you want it to be related to your presentation in general. And you can do this one of two ways. You can create a design from scratch, or you can use a template. Now, if you create a design from scratch, you'll do things like give it its own background, change the sizes of your text, change the font types, add your own images, update or format your line spacing. You'll do all of these things on your own. Versus if you use a template, these things are already done for you. And there are templates available in the software that you'll use. So if you're using Microsoft Word for your presentation, there's an assortment of templates available for you, as well as if you're using Google Slides, there's an assortment of um, templates available for you. And I've also included a very cool resource that I like to use called Slides Carnival. And Slides Carnival, oh my gosh, it is just awesome. It has all kind of templates. And if you can think about it, they probably have it. So check it out if you want to get some templates for your presentations. So moving on to step 5. Step 5 is where we put the rubber to the road and we start entering our content. And basically, for whatever type of presentation we're creating, we want to make sure that we summarize everything into bullet points and short phrases. All right, so no longer will we just copy and paste these long paragraphs. All right, no longer will we do that. Summarize everything into bullet points and short phrases. That long paragraph that you would typically copy and paste onto your slide, just read it and take the content that's important out of it and, throw all the fluff away. Because, a presentation is for you to orate or for you to speak about and not read. So that's why it's important for you to know the content that you're speaking about. So if you know the content that you are speaking about, you won't rely on reading these paragraphs from the board or reading the paragraphs from your presentation. All right. Because, why put the paragraph on the slide? The people that are viewing your presentation aren't going to read it, because they're listening to you. And if you submit it and don't have to present it, chances are your teacher is not going to read the paragraph either. They want things to be simple. So that's why I say summarize it into bullet points and short phrases. And what we can do is we can use images to help convey the message that we're trying to get across on that particular slide. Okay. And it's also important to use correct grammar and spelling. Can't forget that. All right. That's like just basic stuff. All right. So step 6. Step 6 is, adding and formatting images. Adding, formatting images, audio, and video. Can't forget audio and video. So that, all of these things take our presentations to a whole nother level. And images are used to enhance our presentations, not distract from our presentations. All right. So when you're choosing pictures to add to your slides or whatever, you want them to illustrate your text. You want it to be relevant. You don't want to use images that are not related to whatever your presentation is about. It just serves no purpose. That's what I mean by images enhance. If you use a picture that is unrelated, it's going to distract the viewer. All right. Also, you don't want to use images, well, you don't want to make your images either too small or too big. And on another note, you want to make sure that you use images of good quality. If it's a really fuzzy image, don't use it. Find something different. And we're in later lessons, we're going to talk about all of that stuff. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty of making our presentations look good. But just know that you don't want your images to be too small or too big. You have to find some kind of balance. For me, I'll have some bullet points on one side of the presentation and a nice image on the other side. And, there's some balance. Also, all right, do not make Google Photos your background. All right. I know this is a very popular thing to do. And, honestly, it's okay if you do it the right way. But a lot of times, uh, the text that you put on the slide cannot be read because the image in the background has too much color. And there's a way to fix that. You just have to make sure the image is has some transparency to it. It's you kind of got to blur it out a little bit, and there's that's a technique that we'll learn in the future. But just stay away from using Google Photos as your background because that photo in particular may not be relevant for your presentation, or it may not be relevant for every or all the content of your presentation. So it's best to just choose a template or stick with a theme that is simple. All right, simplicity sometimes is always like the best route to take. So let's talk about audio and video. And audio and video is just as good, if not, well, yeah, it's just as good as adding to our presentation as images are, because it's they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. I mean, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, how many words do you think a video is worth? All right, but there's a couple ways to input audio and video into our presentation. And the thing is, we have to figure out how it will play, because if we're presenting our presentation, we want it to be as simple as possible. All right, so you can either embed your audio or video file, or you can link your audio or video file. And to embed your audio and video file is the preferred method of doing it. All right, so this way, whatever that file is, whether it's a video file or audio file, you can play it directly from the presentation. Whereas if you use a link, you have to click on the link. The link is going to take you out of the presentation. You're going to go to another website or something like that. That whole process is just a bit long. All right. So it's better for you to embed your audio and video files instead of linking them. And if you're going to use audio and video, it's important that you know and control your volume. So prior to presenting your presentation, make sure that you have the volume thing figured out. Because what you don't want to happen is whenever you play your audio or your video file, you don't want it to be too loud, all right, and make everyone jump out of their seats. And you also don't want it to be too low, all right, where you'll have to restart the video because no one could hear it. And, you just want there to be sound, period, because, depending on the setup of where you're giving your presentation, there may be speakers, there may be a speaker system, or you may not be able to play audio at all. Because honestly, if you're giving a presentation to a group of people, they're not going to be able to hear the sound coming from the computer. So if that's the case, it's a good idea to just omit that portion of your presentation. All right, so let's move on to step 7. Step 7 is about animations and transitions. This is fun for a lot of users. And me personally, I don't use a lot of animations or transitions, but it is optional. So if you would like, you can. So animations add visual interest. All right, and an animation applies to your text and your images. So whenever you see like images bouncing into the screen or flying into the screen or swirling and doing certain things, those are all animations. And like I said, they add visual interest and they emphasize key parts of your presentation. And there is a really good way of using them if you rehearse. So if you rehearse how to use the animations, it can be an awesome tool to use. All right, rather than just doing it randomly. All right, because remember, each of those animations are controlled with a button click, and you want to know when to click the button for the text or the images to fly in or do whatever they do. Now, for transitions, let me make this text a little bigger. Now, for our transitions are for transitions are how our slides will change from one to the other. Transitions are how our slides will change from one to the other. And it's important that you know the content because you want to both have a smooth transition verbally, but you also don't want your transition to be distracting. So if you're using a swirly transition, you want it to not be distracting. And depending on who your target audience is, you may not want to use transitions at all. Because say for instance you're presenting to a group of elderly people or some professional adults, you don't want to use a lot of what could I say? I guess animated transitions is the best. So a lot of swirls. You have like the windows, it flaps, and the dissolve. You want to keep it simple. Now, if you're presenting to a group of first or second graders, yeah, they're going to appreciate seeing all of those things, and it's really going to have them intrigued. So that's why it's important that you know your target audience, so that you know what things to use and what things not to use. All right. And, for me, I like to keep it simple. If I use a transition at all, it's going to be a simple fade to black or fade to white. Simplicity. That's my motto. I try to keep it as simple as possible. Now for step eight. Step eight is this is important. You have to know the content that you're speaking about. And like I said, you can't just keep copying and pasting these huge paragraphs onto your slides because no one is going to read it. All right. You're the only one that's going to read it. And the reason you're reading it is because you're relying on it and because you don't know what you want to talk about. So it's important that you know the content and that you practice. A lot of times when you have to present, you'll be given a time frame, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. So you have to practice speaking and flowing with your presentation. You have to practice your speech patterns, meaning how fast you'll speak, what you'll be saying. That way, when it's showtime, it's going to be a breeze. You've rehearsed this 100 times, and you can go through your presentation. You know how long it's going to take, and it's going to be smooth. And speaking of smoothness, you want to also practice your transitions. So your transitions are how you switch topics. So how do you what are the sentences and phrases you're going to say as you're going from one slide to the next? Those are your transitions, how you practice your transitions. All right. And yeah, just know the content, rehearse, time yourself, know the sentences and words that you're going to use, and, make your transition smooth from one slide to the next. And then step nine is just revise your presentation as needed. Just revise it. If you're rehearsing and going over it, and you realize, oh, I don't want to talk about that, or that information there is irrelevant, take it out, cut that slide. All right. Like I said, simplicity is key. You don't always have to have like some elaborate presentation because remember, you are the one that knows the content, and you're going to be doing the speaking. And especially if you're presenting to a group of people, they're going to be looking at you and listening to you and not reading from your presentation. The presentation is just complimentary. It's complimentary. It's for their visual appeal. And that's it, guys. So these are all the steps of creating a presentation. I know it seems like a lot, but trust me, if you follow these steps, your presentation will be stunning. And so our next lesson is going to be about techniques. We're going to talk about techniques. The same way that there's rules that apply to how we dress and look. Like you can't wear plaid and stripes and stuff like that. Yeah, there's some rules that apply to creating presentations and making them look as good as possible as well. But I do appreciate you for listening. And as always, thank you.